Hi, I'm Deb Horn, VP of Marketing here at WeBuyHouses.com. Welcome to the 2018 Housing Market Report from We Buy Houses. We Buy Houses is a national real estate brand. We're in markets all across the country, and this year, our third year of doing the report, we went directly to 40 of our professional investors, local market experts in 33 markets across the United States. We asked them these 5 questions in order to get their sentiment about how they feel about their local market in 2018. The 5 questions were, number 1, what type of market do you think it will be next year? Buyer's market, seller's market, or about even? The other questions really are the detail that comes up to that summary of whether it's a buyer's or seller's market. We look at pricing. Is pricing going up, down, or staying about the same as this year? Inventory of housing. Do you think there will be more or less available or about the same? And then we look at the 2 drivers of the cost to improve a house from, say, a depressed condition to a fully retail condition. We need labor and we need materials. And so we asked our guys, in your local market, do you expect labor and material costs to go up, down, or stay about the same next year? So let's dig into the results. We'll start at a national level so you can kind of get a sense of what they said across the country. But as you know, real estate is, all things are local for real estate. And so we'll dive down into each region and into each local office so you can get an idea of what's going on all around the country according to our local market experts. But with the national overview, let's first just step back and say, what do we think next year? Guys, type of market, 70%, almost 71% of our guys said next year it's going to be a seller's market in their area. About 20% said about even, and about 10% said it will shift to a buyer's market. We asked about pricing, and this is what they told us. Nationally, about 63% of them expect prices to rise, and another 34% expect about the same as 2017. So we only see in just a small fraction of a few percent of our markets across the country that there's any expectation of prices falling. Now, we did notice that it was in the upper ends of the market, prices are expected to soften more than the lower ends of the market as far as home price. About inventory, do we expect more houses or fewer houses available for us to buy next year, or for you guys to buy next year? Well, here was the answer from our local market experts. About 22% expect an increase in inventory, and the rest of them all expect it to either decrease or stay about the same as 2017. Inventory is one of those things that really creates the underpinnings of a seller's market. There just aren't enough homes available for the people that want to buy them. Supply does not meet the requirements of demand in the market that we're in right now. As we end 2017, there's about 3.9 million homes on the market, existing homes, and that's way below kind of the normal that we would expect to see, the normal kind of 6-month supply that you would expect to see. We're looking at about a 3-month supply right now. So let's look at those 2 factors that drive our cost to fix these houses up: the cost of the labor, the contractors, and the cost of the materials. Basically, our guys is about 50-50 on whether they expected cost to rise or stay the same next year, and only in a couple of percent, as you see here on the chart, of our areas do we expect the cost of contractors to drop. When you look at materials, no one expects a decrease in the cost of materials next year, and in 48% of our markets, we expect material costs to rise. We especially have seen that in the last few months in the southern markets that were impacted by the hurricanes in 2017. So that's our national overview. But like we said, real estate's really local, isn't it? So let's go into each area of the country and look at that region. We've divided the country up into 4 regions: Northeast, Southeast, South, and West. And so let's dive down and look at each of those regions. Now, before we do, I want to explain this infographic because you'll see this graphic for each region and each office as we look at it. The infographic really puts into a visual indicator the answers to the 5 questions. Is it going to be a seller's market? Price, inventory, contractors, and materials going up, down, or staying the same? If you look at this infographic here, this implementation of it, it's the classic hot market, right? Price going up, inventory going down, and the cost to repair homes are going up for both contractors and materials. That's what we call a hot market. And then a cold market might look something like this: price dropping, inventory rising, maybe contractor costs going down because they're looking for work. We don't really see any market again where material costs are expected to drop, so it'd be unrealistic to characterize the cold market as having dropping material costs as well in 2018. But we might have a couple of markets that look similar to this. Now, is it good to be in a hot market or a cold market? Well, really, neither of them are particularly great, because in a hot market, we can't find houses to buy, and when we do find them, they cost too much often. And in a cold market, you can find plenty of houses to buy, but once you buy them and fix them up, they may be worth less than you expected, and you may have a hard time finding a buyer. So we were really looking for that, the Goldilocks thing of the Goldilocks and the Three Bears. We want to find that middle, that warm market, really to be the best market probably for real estate investing. However, there's plenty of money to be made, in the hot markets, and we'll talk about that and talk about which of the markets we see right now as the hottest in the United States heading into 2018. So let's start with the Northeast on our regional view of the country and this data. And let me jump back up. At a summary level on the Northeast, we basically see price going up and inventory, contractors, and materials staying about the same as 2017. Now remember, every time you see that we're saying inventory staying about the same, 2017 was a tight inventory year. So staying the same does not necessarily mean that inventory is easy in an area where you see that the blue equals mark. So, but this is what they said kind of when we summarize their answers, and let's dive down and look at a few of these offices at a closer level. If you look at offices in Ohio across the top, you see some differences in those markets where Columbus is, a pretty hot market with prices rising, although they do expect some inventory increases in Columbus, where they don't necessarily expect that over in Ohio. And then if you look down in Cincinnati, they're actually expecting more of a softer market compared to the other two, with prices about even and inventories rising and cost of contractors dropping. So you can, again, when you look at real estate at a local level, even within a state and within markets within that state, you'll see subtle differences as we look across them, according to our local market experts. There are areas like Washington, D.C. there on the right-hand side, you see very, very hot market, one of the hottest in the country. And look at it, it's got that hot market profile, exactly what we would expect to see in one of the hottest markets in the United States. And Washington, D.C. is the kind of the hottest market in the Northeast of the cities that reported to us this year. So as we move along, we looked at some of the things that they told us. We asked them just to tell us what your thoughts are about your biggest challenges, your biggest opportunities, other thoughts about the market. And a couple of them that we heard up there in the Northeast, Rob Michaels commented that they're just basically challenged by the increase in competition from other investors who are looking to purchase homes for cash. And so Jerry Jewell, our guy there in Washington, D.C., that super hot market, also commenting on low inventory. And Brooks Humphreys in Columbus, Ohio, similar story, right? High competition for deals, low supply, high construction prices. And as far as biggest opportunities, we highlighted Jeff Baker in Cincinnati, Ohio, said some of the more trendy, popular areas in town will undergo gentrification in order to appeal to the mass market. And we definitely see this in all the major metros. It's just that continuance of gentrification because housing supply is very low. And so it's really common now for the areas where gentrification occurred for that to start to kind of spread and go into other neighborhoods, other streets, other areas around the city. Because we're just basically looking for houses, depressed houses, to make into great houses, so we can put families into them. Let's move down to the southeast real quick, and we see prices rising. Inventory and contractors, they say, will stay about the same as 2017, but the southeast is one of those areas where we're expecting a tick up in material costs in 2018 as the constraints that existed on material supplies at the end of 2017 kind of spill over into 2018. And digging down into the local markets, local offices in the South, we see, look at that hot market profile for Charlotte, North Carolina right there, one of the hottest markets in the country and our hottest market in the Southeast. And you can kind of, as you look across that, you'll see there's just differences, some significant differences across some of these markets. And down in Florida, even like in a market like a Sarasota, they basically see, our guy down there, Greg Weinstein, basically sees that next year will be pretty much like 2017. Atlanta, Georgia is actually a newer market for us and one of the hottest markets in the country. And we do see that one as another area where gentrification is occurring and creating lots of opportunities. That top bar, I think, is interesting because it's all North Carolina, and here again, like we saw in Ohio, you see, Charlotte super hot, Winston-Salem kind of in the middle, and then Goldsboro is kind of a second-tier, smaller market over there toward the east. And so you'll see, depending upon density and location, differences in the market that can be pretty significant when you look down within a region or down within a state, like we see there in North Carolina. Comments that we got from the Southeast include, we wanted to look at these two comments from Garfield Duncan, who's in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. The first one was about challenges. He said, tightening labor market, laborers are being driven away, and the ones left are either doped up or too old to work. We almost thought about deleting that comment, but we decided not to because we did see a problem in 2018 in several markets, areas like West Virginia, North Carolina, some of these areas where the opioid epidemic has really taken a toll. And that's obviously not the only problem that we have out there in society, but that's one that we definitely saw impacts from that this year in regard to how it impacted our ability to get laborers in some of our markets. That's an area we hope to see improvements in 2018, and just to help people living their lives out there. As we talked about Garfield's biggest opportunity, he and his partner down there, Jared Rogers, whose comment you see there on Charlotte, North Carolina, they're beginning to look at going beyond single-family homes, multifamily, small commercial, and things like that. And that's a pretty common path for a lot of our professional investors who have really dominated single-family in their market, and their market's kind of, very, very tight. They start to look for these other opportunities. This is actually page 2. We had a lot of comments from the Southeast, and I wanted to highlight Atlanta, Georgia, Brooks Humphreys, who also is our licensee up in Columbus, Ohio. He's talking about, again, that gentrification in Atlanta. He says, we'll take advantage of Atlanta's rapid gentrification in neighborhoods around the Beltline. If we can effectively target these areas, this is a huge opportunity to take advantage of the huge growth of Atlanta. Atlanta, again, is a great, great market, and we look forward to it being one of our top markets in 2018. And this is one of the reasons why. There's a lot of growth and a lot of that gentrification occurring in the Atlanta metro. Last thing we wanted to highlight in these comments from the Southeast, and Mike Long down in Spartanburg, Greenville, South Carolina, he talked about how there's just a lot of people coming to that area from some of the more populated states. There's movement into the South, and these areas in North and South Carolina have become very popular. And if you look at his comments in bold there, he says all those areas are getting an influx of people over the next 5 years, and they frankly have no way of growing. They have no idea how to do it. There's just going to be a shortage of houses over the next 5 years. our markets are going to become bigger and bigger, and it's going to be a great time. So, man, we are in a housing market boom, and there are some areas like in the South where it's really booming. And so let's turn from that Southeast and kind of pan over and look at the South and see that, guys, this is probably the hottest area in the United States as far as a region. Just prices going up, inventory remaining very tight, and the price of contractors and materials expected to tick up in 2018. And so looking at the cities, this is an interesting view because across the top you have Texas, basically, and from Austin, Dallas, Houston at the far side, and this very interesting market, Waco, Temple, Killeen, right there. Look at that Waco, Temple, Killeen. That is one of the hottest markets in the United States because of, well, for one reason, it's just a great area to live, affordable housing, lots of housing that we can buy, fix and flip. So it's just a desirable area in that regard, but it's also the home of the Fixer Upper show on HGTV with Chip and Joanna Gaines. And they have basically made the area very attractive to a lot of people, and a lot of people are looking to move there. And so Waco, of all markets, one of the hottest markets in the South this year. But other markets that you see that are very, very hot, Huntsville and Birmingham, Alabama, have that profile, and Memphis, Tennessee has that profile. So those are the hot markets. And then Houston, over on the right, a little bit of an outlier because, as you'll see in a moment, I'll read you a quote from Chris Euler, our guy down there, and talk about kind of it's a tale of two markets. The other thing I'll say about this is Austin and Dallas will continue to be some of the hottest markets in the country, with prices expected to increase, another 5 to 8% in these markets, and inventory, contractors, material costs being about the same as they were this year. Oklahoma, basically see that kind of being an even, not a seller's or buyer's market, and in the Shreveport, Bossier City area of Louisiana, our guy there, Jesse, actually sees it being a buyer's market next year. So there are a few markets out there that are, particularly like those second or tier markets, say in OKC or Shreveport, not the major metros, that are experiencing maybe more of a leveling out in the market. At the bottom there, a couple of comments on Tennessee. Memphis just continues to be hot. One of the most productive markets in the country in our system in 2017 will be Memphis. One of the other hottest ones is Birmingham, Alabama, and another probably within the top 5 is that Waco, Temple. So you're probably looking at 3 of the top 5 markets in our entire system. Nashville's a little different because Nashville, what we experienced there was kind of tapering off this year, particularly in the higher price points. They actually started to see prices drop on homes, say like the 400 price point. So we're talking and looking more at affordable housing, say, $250,000, and those homes, kind of leveling out in Nashville. Inventory is expected to be about the same. And so Nashville, as you see, very different conditions perhaps than Memphis as we go into 2018. Comments? Let's see, what did they say in Memphis? Brad Reedy said they are struggling with less inventory and tighter margins. And then Clint Newton there in Huntsville, Alabama said the same thing, tight inventory, more challenging to get deals, and to make the margins needed. Those are the challenges our guys are facing. This one was really interesting because we noticed just right there in their greatest opportunities that popped out, a couple of them talking about using the We Buy Houses brand better next year. And it's so important because if you think about it, many of these markets, there's just too many people out there saying they buy houses fast for cash as is, and it's hard to find the professionals, the guys that really can do it. And the best way for a consumer to do that is to go to WeBuyHouses.com and connect with one of these real estate professionals. I mentioned Houston. Let's look at it down there at the bottom. Chris Euler, the licensee in the Houston market, said we're in a different ball of wax after Harvey. That's why I say it'll turn into a buyer's market. It's tough because there's really two markets now, the flooded market and the non-flooded market. I think it's going to be a buyer's market for the flooded homes for sure, because there's going to be a lot more inventory than investors are able to digest. So really a tale of two markets, the flooded market and the non-flooded market. Buyer's market on the flooded side, seller's market on the non-flooded side, and kind of balances out as Chris sees it. Okay, our last region of the country is the West, where we expect prices to continue to tick up. Would you expect anything different from California and the hot markets in the West region? Inventory, contractors, and materials, our guys expect to all be about the same next year. Let's take a look at those local office views. Guys, we think that probably in our system right now, the hottest market may be that Seattle, Washington market. You'll see a comment here in a moment made by J.J. Clark. I'm going to save I'll let that one create a little mystery there for you, because I want you to see what he said about that market. But it's super hot. And again, hot doesn't necessarily mean great, because markets, when they're really, really hot, they become very difficult to operate in as a real estate investor. Hard to find deals, hard to get good deals, hard to find margin, all those things. So it can be a blessing and a curse when you live in a hot market. Portland and Boise, Idaho. Boise and markets like Salt Lake City, those are hotter markets than you believe, but next year look like we're expecting about the same as this year, maybe a little bit of a continued price uptick in Boise. Same thing with Portland. Similar conditions there. San Diego, expectations about the same as last year, which was a really expensive, really low inventory market, really expensive to operate in. So don't let the blue bars fool you about San Diego, one of the more expensive markets to operate in. And in all, I think when we step back and look at this, and some of these areas, like that Contra Costa market, East Bay area, some of these markets, it's getting just very difficult to purchase homes, because homeowners, particularly in California, we've seen this many times, if they expect house prices are going up, they hold on to the house unless they just have to sell it. Because in a market like California, if you wait a few months, you might make another $30,000 holding on to your house. That's probably not the same incentive down here in Dallas, Texas, where I am right now. So markets, these high-priced, high-flying markets like California, they were really hard to buy when the market's on an uptrend. So notice the comments that Tim Powers, our guy in that market, said here. On this challenge, he talked about just hard to find them, not much inventory, and there's a bunch of investors that perceive these deals in California as very lucrative, and so whether they know anything about real estate or not, there's guys out there saying they do it, and we're competing with everybody who and their uncle who says they're a real estate investor these days. But Tim, as far as the greatest opportunity, he speaks to that point, and that we believe that if that market, if there's a perception that it's topping or near the top, that people will start to shift in their behavior, their thinking, and think about selling in the coming months. So he's hoping for his market to do that, to kind of level out, top out, and maybe start to pull back a little bit, so it can become a market in which people are willing to sell. And then I saved this for the last, Seattle, Washington. J.J. Clark, one of our guys over there, said Seattle is absolutely crazy, fastest growing large city in the nation, leading to inflated prices. They are seeing $400,000 for condemned teardowns in Seattle, Washington. Probably wins our award as the too hot, super hot market in the country this year in our system there in Seattle, Washington, in the West region. So let's just pull back and look at this as a summary, looking now at the regional views. It's pretty much a similar story across regions. Price is expected to tick up in every region in the country in our system. And for the most part, inventory staying about the same as in the past year. But again, remember, that's not necessarily great news, because inventory was very, very tight in 2017. In some cases, like in the southeast and south, we are expecting a continued tick up in the materials cost, but other than that, looks pretty much like 2017 on the cost to renovate, when we look at it at this level. So let's start to wrap things up for you guys. 2018 will be a seller's market in the primary suburban markets in the United States, those that have, significant density, significant population. We are seeing some demand and softening in the more expensive homes in many of the markets. So if you're up at the 400 to 600 on up price points in many of these markets, those homes, the price acceleration is definitely starting to slow down, and in some cases could be starting to pull back in 2018. But we're not seeing that down in the kind of the lower end of the bell curve, below median and up to median. We're basically seeing another year of increasing prices. Now there may be some softness in secondary markets like Oklahoma or Louisiana, but in those top tier markets, you'll definitely see seller's market and rising prices and tight inventory next year. Houston's the only major exception. We'll have a buyer's market due to all those flooded homes created by Hurricane Harvey in 2017. Prices will rise on typical homes in our primary markets. We're expecting 4 to 8% depending upon the region of the market, with a median rise next year of 5.5%. That'll take us from a $248,000 median home value here right now to about $262,000 at this time next year. Inventories will remain tight. Demand will outpace supply for another year as we look ahead. Contractor material costs about the same as 2017, or increasing, especially as we mentioned down in the South and the Southeast. We hope this report has been of a great value to you, and if you're a journalist or an editor, we'd like to offer this data to you and our assistance in helping you do any stories that you might be putting out this in the coming week or so. Our data is available to you. We can also provide high resolution headshots of the people who made comments, and as well as interviews with our local market experts, our CEO, or myself. If you have interest in the story, just reach out to us at press@webuyhouses.com or call us at 817-251-8296. Again, I'm Jeff Horn, VP of Marketing here at webuyhouses.com. It's been my pleasure to spend some time with you today, and we wish you a happy and prosperous new year in 2018. Thank you.